Welcome to the Operators Podcast. Today, we are talking with Ben Winters, who has grown a social media empire in an unlikely business in orthodontics and dentistry. It's really cool to hear how he's applied some of the ideas that we've talked about on the show in a vertical that you probably haven't thought about before. But before we get into it, I want to say thank you to our sponsors that make this episode possible. Northbeam, Postscript, and Fulfill. Could not do this without you. So without further ado, on to a very interesting episode.
The venture-backed D2C SaaS landscape has created a bit of a problematic ecosystem. See, the companies are building to sell rather than building to serve. And most founders are aiming for a Shopify acquisition, prioritizing flashy features over reliability. See, for the established D2C operators, people like myself, Mike, Sean, Jason, there's so many of us, the priorities are very simple. It just needs to work. Right? What matters is dependability. How companies respond to issues when they arise, their service levels. It's how teams respond. It's how, do they drop everything when there's a customer issue? Do founders get their hands dirty? These things matter because this is the life that we live. Now, especially at large scale, these kinds of brands, these large, big brands, they need software like Fulfill. They need things that are reliable, efficient, and things that support their growth and support them one-on-one. And the funny thing is, Shopify does this. You see this from Toby and Harley and their whole team. All they focus on is building and serving, and they've been doing it a long time, and look where it's got them. See, a lot of Shopify apps, these D2C SaaS, I don't know what to call them, the D2C SaaS ecosystem, they should take notice of this. I know Fulfill has. I spent a lot of time with that team. We like them for all of these reasons. There's more than 50 of them now at that company. And I know that they're very, very grateful for everyone who's been listening to the show because they've had tons of people reach out to them for help. And even if you don't wind up working with these guys, they are amazing. You should at least talk to them and get their view on things. Okay, back to the show. Let's get into it.
Ben and Mike. So who is the most successful brother coming out of the fraternity? Is it just you two, or what? Did you guys go with Jeff Bezos as well?
No, I don't know how many. Mike would know way more than me. I only kind of kept up with my year or two of, fraternity brothers, but he was kind of in and out of multiple years.
Yeah, well, when you're a pledge, they make you memorize a lot of guys that have come before you that you don't even know them. You know their name, you know their chapter number, and you can recite it under what I would call a significant duress. And there's a guy a few years older than me that's the new chancellor of TCU. There have been quite a few guys. The guy that's the CMO of Poppy actually was the Rush Chair the year that I came through. So there've been some guys that have gone on to do some pretty significant stuff.
Man, and have you guys always just been as entrepreneurial as you seem now, or is it something you develop later in life?
Me personally, I've always been an entrepreneur. I feel like I was trying to sell ice to an Eskimo when I was 3 years old. I actually do remember I my mom had gotten these soaps, it's like a bag of the seashell soaps, the really cheap ones. And I ran around the entire neighborhood trying to sell these to old ladies, to get $1 per soap or whatever. So I feel and then I did a website in college where it was called Teach Me Awesome, where blogs were big then. And I was kind of doing the kind of daily awesome content from around the world, really kind of before a lot of Reddit and all that existed. And that did okay, actually, surprisingly, back when we had Stumble Upon and stuff, you could run ad revenue to the site and all that. And then, obviously something nice and Windcrest and all the stuff I do now. Yeah.
And Ben, so you were okay, cool. I'm gonna go to dentist college. I'm gonna have a normal, stable career. I'm gonna help people in the medical field. You come out of it and you realize that that's not how being a dentist works. It's a bunch of just little forts, and so you have to go build your own little chapter of it. You have to go win over your own clients. And then was the social media conquest part of that, or that came later? What's the story?
Yeah, so I'll just go into the story. So yeah, basically, a lot of people don't understand this, but you have kind of two different realms that you can run into when you're a dentist. When you get out of dental school, I actually specialized in went even further to become an orthodontist. but same concept applies. When you get out, you have really like 3 options. One is you go start your own de novo practice, and that's a really ballsy thing to do. No one really does that anymore because it's so tough to start a practice from scratch. 2 is, the guy, it's your uncle, it's your dad, it's your brother, it's your whatever. You go in, you associate, you work for a few years, and then you buy them out, and then you own that practice. And the third one, which is what a majority of people do now, is they go work for a corporation. And that's because we kind of had private equity come in. They saw what a good deal dentistry was. And it's actually kind of became a problem because you guys understand, how private equity works and stuff. But they would basically go in and they would pay people way over asking price to take their dental offices. And then they would just drive down the quality and increase the profit. And then they would sell it in 5 years and kind of leave the dental office in shambles. And, so now actually a majority of dental offices are those private equity owned corporations. But regardless, talking about that, we can get on that later if you want to. But most people go to a corporate because it's just, there's not enough people that want to sell anymore to a normal person because they can get a bigger X multiple from these private equity groups. And so when I got out, I went to talk to everybody. I was actually going to move to Tulsa, Mike, and open up there with a couple guys. And everybody wasn't selling, or the other ones were, their son was coming in. And so I was like, well, I don't want to do a de novo because I have no idea what I'm doing. And so I went and ended up working with this group in Arkansas. They had just bought all these offices from this guy. And it was all over Northwest Arkansas, which if you've ever been in Northwest Arkansas, super pretty place. And it was in Bentonville, was where I was supposed to start. And so I talked to these guys. I really didn't want to work for a corporate, but it's kind of just what you got to do for a couple of years to make some money. I went because I really liked these guys and I saw what they were doing. And they were like, hey, we got like an office or 2 down in Bentonville we want you to take care of. We haven't even really seen the office because we just bought it from these guys, but we'll just get you in there and we'll let you go to town. And actually the plan was if I could flip those offices, that I would move to Tulsa and start opening up offices of my own and then getting management fees per office I open, all that type of stuff, which is a pretty cool career. But anyways, so I ended up going to Bentonville. I go show up my first day and I look at my first patient and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Like there's missing teeth where there's not supposed to be missing teeth. They've been in treatment for 5 years. They've got cavities everywhere. And I'm like, is this what the real world is like? Like, this is what, this is terrible. And then number 2 comes in, same story. Number 3 comes in, same. And after I see about 100 patients that day, because it's just way overflowed with patients, we were seeing 100, 150 patients a day. And that happens in those corporate, where they're just trying to pile up patients. And all of a sudden I was like, there's a problem because this is like gross negligence. Like we could get sued for this. This is how bad this is. And I wanted to make sure that they knew. So I talked to the CEO of the company. He's an awesome guy. And he actually was like, at first he was like, I'll come down for a few days and I'll help you. You're a newbie. I can understand it's a little stressful sometimes. And I'm like, this is not about stress. I know what the hell I'm doing. This is bad. And so he, because OU, if you guys don't know, OU in a dental ortho school capacity is one of the top in the nation. We learn like everything very hardcore. So we have really good skills of everything. And so like, I was really confident in my skills, but I was like, this is jacked up. So he came in and I saw him probably sit down at that first patient. And then he kind of weirdly looked around, came back and sat with me, kind of joked a little bit. And he went back again and sat down. And I could tell by like patient 2 or 3, he had the same realization. And it turns out that the doctor that was working there was actually legally blind. And so he could not remove the glue off the teeth to get the braces off. So what he would do is he would just basically tell them, hey, slap a power chain on it. We'll see you in 10 weeks. Slap a chain power. Because you're supposed to be done in 18 months. And these all were like 4 or 5 months long, or 4 or 5 years long in treatment. The teeth were extracted in the wrong pattern, I guess, because he was seeing things weirdly. And it was bad. It was really, really bad. So for the first year I was there, I guess because of this, all the other it comes to find out that the dentist previously that owned all of these, not only was he running these in this capacity where like a lot of these missteps were happening, but he actually had a really big bone to pick with dentists. If you guys don't know, yeah, it gets worse. Trust me. So when you become a dentist, you can do everything. You're generalized. You can do ortho, you can do endo, you can do oral surgery, you can do whatever you want. It's basically whatever you want to do as a general dentist, you can do, even if you don't have the full specialized training on it. But once you specialize in a specialty field like orthodontics, I am not allowed to do any general dentistry. I cannot do a filling. I cannot do I can't even do a cleaning. But all I can do is ortho. So a dentist can do ortho, but we can't do a cleaning, even though we went to dental school, which is really weird and messed up. But that's the way that they protect their field from stealing patients, or I guess is what their concern is. And so he really had a big bone to pick with us. He was a big orthodontist. He said, a lot of things, in meetings and big things and all that. And so he basically had a vendetta against dentists and wanted to bring people in to do hygiene in his offices because you can make a lot of money off of just cleanings while they're in braces. And he actually was changing the law in Arkansas, like with judges and all these things, to get that changed. But during that time, he basically kind of sent a letter out to every single dentist in the state of Arkansas and said, screw you, we don't need you. We're going to lower our prices so much that you can't compete. And then he opened up dental offices attached to all of it was a big mess, right? So every dentist in the state of Arkansas hated him. Need to know, this is not the person I'm currently working for. This was the previous owner that we bought all the things from. And so when I get there, I'm getting in my CEO mode and I'm like, it's time to grow this practice. It's really poor. It's doing really badly. And so I start to call up dentists, because the first thing you do in dentistry is you do, the cold call. Hey, come out to lunch with me. Let's meet. Let's talk. Let's become friends. And I started getting calls, and every one of them was either a hang up or a screw you, F you. I would never want to deal with your company ever again. You stole patients from me. You did this. You're a piece of trash or whatever. So I realized very quickly that I'm not going to grow this practice and have any goodwill with any of the dental people. And if you guys don't know, in dentistry, referrals, for the most part, is like 90% of your business. People didn't even really understand the social media marketing, let alone, there was some ad buying going on, but it was really poorly done. Still is today. Actually, we're trying to change that with Windcrest. But so basically I had nowhere to turn. So luckily I had done some previous Instagram stuff. I know I'm small now, but I used to be a lot bigger. I used to be a bodybuilder, and I used to have a fitness page. And I got that up to maybe 50, 60,000 on Instagram. And so I knew how to do some social media and grow it. And so I was like, I guess maybe I got to do an Instagram page for this. Is that what I was like? This is just going to be rough. And, basically my whole goal is to get this, multi tens of millions of dollars a year job, creating multiple offices and all these things. And the only way I can do that is to flip this bad office that was 20 times worse than anything I've ever seen in my life. And so lucky be it just by, you see like the world and success, is just so much luck based, but I feel like you kind of put yourself in a position to make that luck happen. And I was just talking with my kids like I usually do. And I noticed that day they just seemed to all be on their phones, like just enamored to this object. Normally it's Snapchat stories, it's Instagram, YouTube. And this one was completely different. I saw just everybody just swiping away. And I was like, what the heck is everybody doing? And so finally, by the third or fourth person I talked to, I'm like, hey guys, what the heck are you guys watching? What are you doing here? And they were like, oh, it's this new thing called TikTok. It used to be Musical.ly, and then they just bought it and they changed it. And I was like, I heard of Musical.ly at that time because I'd seen like these weird ads on YouTube of like kids lip syncing to songs. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to lip sync songs for dentistry over here. That's just weird. And they were like, no, it's not lip syncing. It's like Vine, but it's 15 seconds. And I was like, oh, okay, that's really cool. And so I was like, this is probably the first week it was available. And so I go ahead and I look and I start swiping. In my brain, I'm kind of an engineer brain, and I just kind of see patterns really quickly. I feel like that's why I'm so good at like kind of predicting future things and seeing where things are headed. And so I started to see this pattern where people were riffing off of each other's content. And it was really the first time in social media that a trend had ever been something that you could do, which is like where somebody does a piece of content and then you basically steal it and you copy it, and then they steal it and they copy it and they steal it and they copy it. So you find these tastemakers, and then you would just do the same content they did in a dental version. And so I saw that really quick. I was like, okay, well, I'll try this out. And I just hopped on one of the trends, and then I made it about getting your braces on and off because it matched with the song words. And, back then they didn't have any of the tools that they had. So you had to like write the stuff you wanted to on a piece of paper, but you had to write it backwards in a mirror. So it would get flipped when you filmed it. It was a mess, but so did it. And we came back the next day, and, I'm living in this land of Instagram where I'd been forever. And, at that point it was a pay to play type thing. You either had to be super famous, follow, like, all that crap back in the day to get anything, join all these groups and do all this, back end stuff to try and get any followers. So I was like, I'm going to get like one view on this, that's what I'm expecting. And, I come back at lunchtime and my team's like, hey, have you checked the video? And I was like, nah, I probably have like 10, views on it or something. So I pop it up, and to my surprise, we had 10 million views, 1 million likes. And then I looked at my following count, and I had 100,000 followers in the first day.
Oh my God.
And that's when I kind of I started reading the comments, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest dentist ever. What the heck is a dentist doing on here? What's an adult doing on here? Whatever, like, this guy's the coolest adult ever. And I think I had just hit the perfect section, of just kind of being the first to something. And also, I think braces related to all these kids, because they were 13, 14, 15 that were the main people on the app at this time. And it was just like that perfect explosion of like, holy crap, this guy makes good. I have some artistic, I can make good content, and I know how to film and shoot and light and do things like that. Animated, all that type of stuff. And then just the mix of being a professional as well. And these kids were like, what is this guy doing on this app? This is like our cool kids club, and he's part of it. And so we just blew up like crazy. We actually blew up our page, which was for the corporate page, to about 500,000 in like 2 weeks. Wow. And then at that point, I was like, I should probably tell my workers. I could probably tell my boss that I'm making social media posts, with his corporation's logo and everything on it. We have 500,000 followers. Should probably let him know. So, I talked to him, and I kind of bring it up that, hey, this is something really cool. And they were like, oh, that's awesome. You can keep doing it if you want. We just don't really care. We don't want to pay you any extra for it. We don't think it's really of value. How can these 500,000 people, none of them are from Bentonville, or if they are, they're very small. So we just don't see how it's anything important for us. And so I kind of made the decision really quickly, and I was like, I see potential here. There's a huge potential here. And, but I also realized if I kept growing this account, that they would legally have rights to it because it was under their brand name and all that type of stuff. And so I basically said, okay, well, that's fine. I'm going to just completely throw away this 500,750,000 whatever follower account. I'm not even going to touch it anymore. I'm just going to start my own. So then I went home and I started to think about a name, and I was like, man, I don't know. My name's Ben. I'm a dentist. So the Bentist. Okay, cool. We'll go with that. It was like just a quick name thing. The Orthodontist didn't sound as good. So, we just went there. Plus, I kind of talk more generally about the health in general. So I thought that marketed a little bit better. So we created the Bentist from there. At that same time, actually, TikTok had reached out to me from the original page, and they said, hey, we love your content. We really want to age up the content. If you guys don't know, at that time, TikTok had a big lawsuit on their hands because they had just integrated into Musical.ly, and Musical.ly had unlimited live streams for all ages. So you could be like 2 years old live streaming on whatever, getting money from random people. And I guess there was a lot of older people who were donating to little people, and you can kind of cross your T's and dot your I's from there. But so they were really, really wanting to age up, and they had this big vision. It was really cool because, maybe a 2,000-3,000 square foot office, to start out in TikTok with like 5 people in the United States, and they asked me to be a part of their very first ambassador group because I was the very first adult and really the very first professional on the whole entire app of TikTok. Which is crazy to say now. And so I joined with like 4 others, which were probably the only people 18 above on the app. One was like a teacher, one was, all these people. So 2 were dancers and all this. So anyways, we joined and became the very first ambassador group for TikTok. We went across the country trying to pull people from YouTube, Instagram to come start this new thing called TikTok. It's going to be huge, guys, I promise. And so we went around and did that forever. But anyways, I started that new Bentist account and really never looked back. And my content has changed so much throughout the years, because you really have to kind of piece and see what's doing well and kind of riff off of that. In our world, we call it the yoink and twist. It's basically they do it in everything. You look at YouTube, you'll see one person do a really awesome piece of content, and you'll see 45 others do the same, idea in their own, way. And yeah, I mean, from that point on, if you guys to go back, because you're like, okay, great, that's great, you're TikTok famous now, but how did that correlate to your business? This is a business podcast, and I'll say that it definitely did a lot. Now, obviously, a lot of that was because I was doing the right thing, and I was, getting all these patients out and correcting all this crap, and so people were wanting to bring their kids in to see me now because of this awesome orthodontist that's there. But actually, in 1 year, we went as a corporation who was the most hated corporation in freaking Bentonville, Northwest Arkansas at that time. We went in that first year I was there, we ended up winning the best office in Northwest Arkansas via votes by our peers and patients. So in
Most
1 year, because of TikTok,
sure.
yeah. In 1 year in TikTok, we completely obliterated. He didn't even think that we were going to be able to make it a profitable office, and we were profitable and winning against all these private offices that had won for 5-10 years in a row. So it was a pretty big deal. And so at that point, they kind of were like, "Hey, can we pay you a little bit to do some more for our whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm doing my own thing now." I had like 1 million followers by then on the Bentist, and I was like, you guys told me you didn't care, and I kind of knew at that point that it was my time to kind of move on. COVID had hit. There was all that kind of weird stuff about paying people, not paying people. And I was just that at that point I realized, I was like, I am only as good as this employer wants, and they can fire me at any time or not pay me at any time. And even though it was scary, I knew that I probably at that time, I thought there was really a 3 to 5 year run rate on social media accounts, which is normally how it goes. In the old school way, it was like you're going to be popular for 1 to 3 to 5 years if you're amazing, and then you're going to become a nobody and then just sift off into nothing land. And that's how it always has been on YouTube. And so I was like, we need to get to Dallas. That's where my wife's friends and some of my family and everything's at. And so we moved to Dallas in the middle of COVID, got a loan in the middle of COVID, and started an office for ortho, all in the middle of COVID. I think we were like the only loan I think Wells Fargo gave out for a business loan in that whole entire period. And it was only because of my social media account and all that they would allow it to happen. And so we built it up, and then here we are, 3-4 years later. So we survived for sure. But that's how I got into social media. That's how, it kind of built up and grew. And then I feel like I was in the right place, the right time. And then I just happened to already have a knack for content creation. And I think weirdly enough, that pattern recognition ability to kind of understand early what a trend was, how to modify your content to be continually doing well on a viral aspect really helps launch you into the next kind of stratosphere. So now I feel like I could make I made multiple accounts. I made one with my wife, we got her to like 800,000 and I think it was a month.
My God.
And then, I know. And then she gave up on that account because she started getting bullied by like 13-year-old girls that were telling her she was ugly in the comments, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So now she really regrets it because we wish she would have continued that account because it would have been a crazy, awesome thing for her. But then I started a gaming account. We got that to 2 million, Twitch streamed with some of the biggest guys, for a while. And then until I realized that it was like 4 hours a day I was wasting that I could be building other things with. So the concepts, they just work everywhere for everything. It's pretty insane.
We absolutely use Northbeam, and me specifically, every day. I'm constantly in there building out reports. And I remember when we brought it on a couple years ago and I got to meet Austin, who is the founder, and he is fabulous. And he was selling me on the idea of, not using in-platform and really using a separate platform as like our source of truth, which is what we needed. And I mean, it has been a deal breaker for us. It's helped us scale in areas and on platforms that we didn't even, weren't getting a good read on. And it's helped us optimize for our channels that we really had a lot of high spend on. And their team is great. My favorite part is taking the calls with them where they, dive deep into the insights, and they've always got really great information for us. So yeah, I love Northbeam. we wouldn't be where we're at today without them.
It's super interesting because Sean's talked about this, but I mean, the creator economy and the Mr. Beasts of the world, like you don't think about using social media and being a creator to drive an orthodontics business, but maybe you're just kind of like a proof of where things are going, that every single vertical of business is going to have an element of this that gets disrupted.
Well,
I go for it.
Go ahead, Ben. No, it's.
Oh, I was going to say I 100% agree, and I tell people this all the time. We were just in New York for the Top 100 YouTube Creators Summit, and every time I go to that, I'm so blessed that I can even consider myself invited to those things. But I'll understand how kind of new and fresh these guys are to the entrepreneurial world. They're blowing up, but they have no idea. And I'm like, guys, you need to create, a company around this, an LLC, something. Because, whenever, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't get invited the next year because they fall off and they have no backup plan.
How much turnover do you think there is in that top 100 year over year?
Oh, there's a huge turnover. There's obviously your mainstays that really get it because they understand how to run a business entrepreneurially, because that's what it really boils down to. Can you handle a team? It's a business, just like any other thing is, just like my ortho offices. The YouTube world for the high end people is a business. You have producers, you have, the video equipment people, you have ideation script writers that are coming to you with, 10 ideas a week, and you choose the top ones and doing research and all these different types of things. Now, those are obviously the ones that are going to stay for a while. And then you have your people, kind of like me in the middle, who are like business people beforehand that understand the idea of social media, and we can pivot and we can continue staying relevant, but we're not like a Mr. Beast getting 50 million views every single video. I could, if I wanted to hire all those people and run an entire organization around it, but that's a lot of work. I got other things I'm doing. And then you have your people on the bottom who go viral, they get big for what they do, but then the tides turn and they don't have that understanding how to pivot. And if you can't pivot, then you just end up going boom, 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 boom.
Ben,
boom.
so
there's a lot of.
I would love to talk about the transition from employee, right? So in 2020, you are still an employed manager, basically, of this of dental offices in Northwest Arkansas, and then you're like, hey, the social media thing's blowing up. I think I can do my own office, right? So you go out there and you move to Plano, you get this thing set up. Now, looking at the business, like, do you consider it one organization, right? Where there is a flywheel where it's social media content driving new signups? And then are you taking sponsorship revenue or ad revenue? I'd love to understand like the actual economics of like
I
how
want
this
to know
thing
the
is
whole
working.
business now. Like what's the breakdown of everything?
I'm like I said, a very entrepreneurial person, and I look at things differently. And you're very correct. The usual way of a dental office is you get a loan from a bank, you open it up, and then you start shaking doctors' hands and trying to get patients in your office. And I was like, man, I have this big thing. I'm the largest dental influencer. I'm really the only dental influencer in the world, even close to this level. And I have a capability to get some things done, and in dental school, I started to look around and I saw like, oh, this cafeteria was like the Delta Dental cafeteria. And this, operating bay was the whatever operating bay. And I was like, man, I wonder if I can subsidize my overhead with my person, with the Bentist brand and having it be involved in that. And every business I have is actually a flywheel off of each other. And I did that on purpose, but we can get into that later. But yeah, you're 100% correct. So the Bentist can be the face, like the Geico Gecko of Windcrest, can drive patients to Windcrest, can do that. Because I had seen what it could do without a doctor, referral. And actually we decided to not do doctor referrals at all. When we started, we decided to kind of flip it on its head. So there were two things really important about Windcrest that was completely different, that have never been done before in a dental office that I know of. One was I went and I talked to all these companies, the Invisaligns, the Damon Brackets, Sprint Ray, 3D printing, OrthoFi, Backend, Dibs, all this thing. And I basically called them up and said, hey, I'm going to build the best orthodontics offices across the country. That's what I'm doing. We're going to basically kind of form a corporate entity that is doctor owned, not private equity owned, to kind of stick it to the private equity guys that are kind of ruining the profession, is what the consensus is in the dental community, that it's overall net bad for dentistry having private equity own all these offices. And so interestingly enough, none of them had ever dealt with influencers. None of them had ever dealt with a thing like that. They had dealt with what they call key opinion leaders, which are doctors that'll go talk for them and do those things, but they've never dealt with an influencer. So unfortunately, the normal demands for an influencer seem crazy, outlandish, wild to these dental companies. But regardless, I didn't really care about that. I was just trying to run a business as efficiently as possible. And so we ended up not doing like the big pays and big ads for them or anything like that. But I just said, hey, here's the deal. Here's what's going to happen. If you give me your product for a heavy discount or even free, like free printers, free whatever, if you guys have an event or something, I'll come speak. Or we can in the future, do something, collab on something. I can help you with some social media stuff. But the big thing is you're going to be now associated with the dentist's office. And as we grow, we have a lot of dentists that come in and they ask me, like, what are you doing? How are you operating? Like, what are the systems in place that you're kind of using? And so I'm like, you can tell other people, oh, the Bentist uses our stuff. The Bentist uses Orthofy. The Bentist uses Invisalign. The Bentist uses whatever. And obviously for Invisalign and bigger companies like that can cut a check, they understood the process. They were probably the only influencer-led dental company that was like, I know what I'm doing here. So we ended up subsidizing a lot. Invisalign, we ended up striking a deal with them, got a really nice 3D scanner. They built out our scan room with Orthofy, helped us with the onboarding finance stuff. And then we got the website built for free and all that type of stuff. And SprintRay graciously gave us a whole suite of all the 3D printing stuff and resin and all that. And so I finally started to realize, I was like, dang, dude, my overhead's going to be cheap as hell because I got all these things given to me now. And I think as we build out Windcrest and get it bigger and bigger, I'll be able to leverage that more and more and have a really unique lever that I can pull that other dentists can't. And then the other thing I did was I actually decided that I was just going to bypass the dentist completely. It's like, screw you guys, you're all doing braces and Invisalign. And it's like, it's really hard to get a referral these days unless it's a pediatric dentist, because all the dentists do Invisalign now, and they don't want to send you the case because they're going to try and get some money from it themselves. Now, most of them fail at, the harder cases, and they end up coming to us anyways. But regardless, the other thing I did was that. So the first year we made some organic posts. We built up the office to, I think, 750,000 in revenue the first year, which is actually really good because we're in the middle of Plano around a lot of established dentists. So, to get close to $1 million in revenue your first year is pretty unheard of unless you're in a rural area that just is like, those blow up like crazy. And so what we did is I just made organic posts on the actual Bentist. And then I said, hey, I kind of walked them through the process of building the office and letting people know that I was there. And then I actually had to stop, weirdly enough, because when I would make a post on the Bentist, we were kind of figuring out these growing pains as we go. But when we would do it, we would get thousands of calls.
Way too much inbound. Yeah.
Way too much inbound. And my two girls are like answering phone calls all day. And, hey, I'm from New York. Can I get, braces by the Bentist? Hey, I'm from Michigan. Does he come up here to Michigan to do braces? And we came up really quickly understanding that was not going to work as a play for us. Overall, as a branding play to let people know, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is cool. Yes. And in the future, when we have them across the country, it's going to be amazing. Because
so that's the long-term vision, is that you can soak up that demand by having a huge network.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually hired our first associate 3 months ago to kind of off-bound me from this office so we can do number 2 and 3. And then we have partners that we will basically be able to do this, full private equity free. So it's going to be a model that we're going to is we're going to basically follow the Costco model where, you can't take over 30% profit, the rest of profits, and have to go back into the business to pay employees more to do better things and open more offices and do all that type of stuff. And, me and the team who's building this up, the operations side, we don't really need the money. And I actually was going to completely get out of orthodontics. And then they kind of talked me into coming back. And we're like, hey, this is a big mission statement that we can do. You're probably the only one in the world that can do this right now. And, with our thoughts, and we can get way into the stuff that I'm doing. I'm also an AI engineer, so I'm building out all these automation apps for, the orthodontic side to lower overhead even more. But yeah, the goal is to grow those, fully across the country and have it be an amazing place for kids and families to get treatment across everywhere. And they know in their heart that this is a good place to go without having to kind of just test and just find these random doctors that they have no connection with.
So it's kind of like the next evolution on the PE roll up, where these PEs have been rolling up these offices and trying to kind of create a uniform experience. You're doing that, except you've got this national marketing layer on top of that through social media.
Yeah. And unfortunately, so there's not a lot of PEs that have tried the national rollout. They tried that. And then what happened was people would see that the quality was bad. And then they would say, don't go to any other Mint Dentistry ever again. Or not saying Mint Dentistry is bad. I don't really know the internals of Mint Dentistry. That's just the first corporate.
Mint just caught astray. Sorry if you're listening to this.
Yeah, sorry, Mint. Yeah. I just talked about a random corporation. I've never been to Mint. I don't know if they do good or bad. But there are a lot of those corporate owned ones that do poorly, right? And then they say, okay, well, we don't want to go to any because it's a corporate. We want to go to private, right? And so what they did around that was the Heartlands of the world and all them actually said, okay, well, we're going to buy you. Don't tell anybody. Don't change your name. Keep it Dr. John's office and just pretend you're not a corporate. But then in the back end, we have to change all the things and increase bad. And once again, not saying Heartland's bad. That's just one of the big ones that do that. And so we'll be the first that I feel will be a national branded rollout that actually has trust intertwined with it, with high-end customer service and high-end, service and just getting great results and treating people fairly and well at a price that makes sense.
Dude, I love the business model because it is a massive industry. And like the thing about dentistry, I mean, it's probably hundreds of billions of dollars a year in treatment costs and services. It's this massive economy where there is absolutely no face to it at all. There is no corporation. If I told you to name anything related to dentistry, you might say toothpaste, right? Or you might say Invisalign. There is no end care provider, and everything you're going to get is through an end care provider. So yeah, I could see the Bentist having 100 offices or 1,000 offices eventually, right? So dude, I love the vision. I love the model. So let's talk about the actual economics, right? So you're doing $1 million your first year. Your social media account could probably generate $10 million a year. So are you commingling those funds, or are you treating them as separate businesses, or how does it really work?
Yeah. So I guess we hopped off that story so quick. I forgot to kind of say, so that first year we did 750,000 in revenue, which we thought were really good. And basically kind of proved out that our concept worked. We also did paid advertising too. And I built a Windcrest separate page to deal with that, making my own account on the Windcrest page only. So it was a lower following, hashtagging location, tagging Plano. So it was getting on the algorithm of local views, a lot less than the super viral, but way more targeted organically. And that's how we kind of grew that to 750K. But anyways, you're very correct. YouTube started doing way better than Windcrest, right? So that year, I was the first on TikTok, but I was also the very first on Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, because they kind of both paid me to come do deals, to come start their platforms before it was available to the public. And that year, YouTube was going crazy. It was ripping. Right now, we average still like 100 million views, a month or so. We do about 2 billion, actually closer to 2 billion views a year on YouTube. Obviously that goes up and down as you need to, but shorts don't pay you as much, by the way. These are all like shorts views right now. But then it was like my long form. I was really taking, all the stuff I was talking about, like researching and thumbnails and doing all those things. I was really into it. And we were crushing, 10 million views, a long form video and all that type of stuff. And I kind of quickly turned to my wife and I was like, hey, I think we should just stop taking new patients. I was like, let's just use this as a studio. And like, I don't care as much about growing the patients. We still saw patients that would come in and they would know us and they would be like, hey, we saw you on the link in your bio, whatever. But we actually stopped after that first year marketing the office at all. We didn't even talk about it. We didn't do any ads. We didn't do any organics. I kind of stopped doing the posting on Windcrest. And, because YouTube was doing that well, I was just like, I want to put all my focus into this. And sure enough, it did really good. Now, there was an unfortunate time where at that time, shorts and long forms were linked together. And What that means is that as my shorts blew up, because it's way easier to blow up a TikTok or something like that, it would drive all the recommendations to my long forms. And then those would blow up. So then all of a sudden, I'm getting 10 million views on which pays you, a ton of money. I was making like $100,000 per long form video I put out at that time.
Wow.
Which is crazy. And so, yeah, it was crazy. But then one day in January, it just goes from, all this all the way to just way down. We were making like, 6 figures a month all the way down to like $15,000 a month out of nowhere, just completely split. And what they had done was they had actually completely cut the ties algorithmically from shorts to long form, because what they were finding was people were so addicted to short form that it was completely populating their feed over any long form videos. And so they were like, oh, well, we can't have that, and so they split them up completely. And now you have a short shelf, versus the long form. But it completely killed our monetization value. The views were amazing. Those blew up like crazy, but the monetization cut way down because shorts are just way less monetizable. And so I'm trying to figure out where this one. So yeah, year 2, 3, all that type of stuff didn't really go well. But now that we have the operations side and we built out the teams that want to build it out nationwide, and we have that whole plan, now we've hired people and now we're going to start building and growing. But you're talking about businesses and commingling. I treat the business as a completely separate entity. So the Bentist is an entity, Windcrest is an entity. I have a marketing for dentists that trains and teaches people how to use the tools that I have, called Busy, that basically teaches them how to find those viral structures and build their office the same way organically, because like you were saying, I do see this as the next evolution of dentistry. And then the newest one that I guess obviously Something Nice is another big one that plays into the offices and will be kind of the bags for everybody to get. Patient will get all the products to get them on that pipeline, to you start increasing that MRR and gaining, just products with the people. And then the last thing that you were saying is you're talking about, I know I'm hopping all over the place here, guys. Sorry about that.
No, it's great.
But the other big thing that I see coming in the world of all businesses is AI and automation. My dad went to MIT. I got into MIT, actually turned it down to go to OU because, Mike and the SIGEP guys were just so smart down there. I just had to go join them instead. But so I've always been kind of this engineering tech brain. I was taking apart computers with my dad when I was little, on Commodore 64s, command prompting and all this stuff. So AI and automation is going to be huge over all these businesses. So I think I can even lower our overhead another 30-40%, just with AI and automation over the next year or two.
Well,
so
this is one of the most exciting opportunities, I think, is that if you are entrepreneurial, you understand technology, you understand marketing levers, there are so many industries where you can go in and be disruptive and be successful. And it's funny because everybody wants to try and gravitate and compete towards the same industries that are really flashy. Like nobody's first thought is, oh, I'm going to go do this in dentistry, or I'm going to go do this in home construction, or I'm going to go do this in whatever, concrete laying. But that's exactly where some of the easiest opportunities are, because these are industries where no one has run the playbook of kind of using the modern tech stack and a modern approach towards marketing. So I think that this is a really inspirational episode in that way, that if you're listening to this, the world is just full of opportunities to take, whether it's, AI or social media marketing or, influencer marketing, whatever, apply playbooks that have worked in consumer and take them to other areas. And I think there's going to be a lot of really big success stories in very, quote unquote, boring businesses.
All right, let's take a quick break and we're going to thank our sponsor, Postscript. Okay, here's what I want to talk about. There's been this trend in e-commerce where we're trying to get to like all-in-one solutions. So like SMS, email, everything's in one place. And I think there's a bunch of weird arguments for this. I think this is all BS. Like, I would rather have a solution that is like point built and is great for that one thing. This is why I like Postscript. This is why we use Postscript. They do SMS. They do it really freaking well, right? And I hate to say I told you so, but a lot of brands have gone to like the all-in-one thing to try to integrate email and SMS, and they've just moved back. And they do it for a bunch of reasons. Oh, it's easier for attribution. It's easier on my marketing team to log into one place. I think that's all BS. Look, the reason we like Postscript is all they think about, they eat and breathe SMS, which means my team is constantly getting access to new features before anybody else. They're actually consulting with us and helping us get better at SMS. I think this email and SMS need to be integrated to make SMS more effective is a lie. The reality is most of us aren't sending enough email and most of us aren't sending enough SMS. So trying to trigger one off the other is likely just a waste of time. And I don't know too many brands personally who can tell me straight faced that this has been a big benefit to them. So in my view, in my experience, the reason we like having Postscript as a sponsor is because we use it and it works really well. And the team is great. Their support's awesome. Their pricing is awesome. So that's my shout out to Postscript. It's wicked to have them as a sponsor for the pod. Let's get back to the show.
Honestly, I think, yeah, like you said, the world is for your taking. This is the first time in the history of the world that you can make one piece of content. You don't have to change it over platforms, just one short. You can post it everywhere and you can go viral across the entire internet with just one 30-second piece of content that you throw around. And I know you guys understand, paid advertising and just how you can kind of pay to play too, but organically is even easier. And then, yeah, I mean, with AI, it's going to get even easier. We've already been training models on my videos. Now, luckily, I have a whole plethora of videos that we can pull from, but I highly do believe that in just a year, maybe 2 years, I'll be able to fully automate all my content without me even being there. And it'll look and feel.
So will that be chopping up old content, or are you going to actually create new content with a digital version of yourself doing the talking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a whole plan to create a whole entire industry around the Bentist. So we're going to have not only the Bentist on the dental side with Windcrest and Something Nice and all that, and we'll be able to perpetually create content by, just training vision models. You can use things like HeyGen and other video avatar services that are getting better and better, 11 Labs to clone voices and things like that. And then you can build these things that are called agents. I don't know how big you guys are into AI, but 2025 is going to be the year that we finally have figured out how to do what's called agents or agentic workflows, meaning that we can take these LLMs that are voice, video, vision, whatever, we can put them all in one, and then we can actually make them do a task. And even crazier, a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of specialized agents that can just literally look at your computer screen and make clicks and do things based on your trainings. So you can kind of extrapolate where that's going to go automation wise is literally anything that's done intellectually, anything that is done by clicking a mouse, a keyboard, or even looking at a computer screen is fully gone as far as automated, And that's already here today. Literally the technology is here today to do that. It's just people don't really understand that yet. And so, the other thing that I think is inspirational about that is some people, it's really scary. It's holy crap, I'm going to lose my job. And yes, a lot of you probably will lose your jobs in the next 3 to 5 years. But you also have all of this opportunity to go create crazier and bigger things that you've ever wanted to create. For me, starting this, company and doing Something Nice and really taking on the oral care space is one thing, but I never thought I would be able to do full manufacturing and take on the Crests and Colgates of the world. But now that we have, NVIDIA and all these services that can automate the warehouse, automate the robotic flows, automate all of that. Well, now I'm once that's all fully automated and there's companies in place that can build those out for people, I can fully own a full automation manufacturing plant for all of my goods and bring my cost of goods even further down. Meaning that I can put the cost, back into the, customer's hands, make your products cheaper. And I think that's what we're going to see with this AI automation boom is actually a deflationary thing that's going to happen to all these products. And I guess I'd be interested to think about what your guys' takes are on AI and how a deflationary effect and people losing their jobs could affect the market coming in 2025, 2026. So that's something I've really been trying to think about. And that's why we're trying to automate Windcrest so fast to bring those prices down to be ready for that hit, whenever that may be.
Yeah, Ben. Look, I think AI is super exciting and productivity, but by definition is deflationary, right? So the more productive every hour or unit can be, it leads to a deflationary environment. I just want to talk about why I love your business real quick, because I think there's four very exciting layers there, right? The first is the content. This is like, I would call it the Bentist stack, right? The content fuels everything. Whatever you're going to do, you getting views will lead to anything else. The next layer beneath is the service layer. Right now you have one location and you're delivering services to people. That could very easily by itself be a $1 billion in billable business, right? Like it could be the number one brand in dentistry. Then you have this product layer, which is something nice. Once again, could do easily $100 million a year. High Smile does about $250 million a year, 250 million, and they get sued all the time because the product doesn't work. Just make a better version of High Smile. That's a quarter billion dollars a year right there. And then you have this SaaS layer, right? This actual digital product layer that you're rolling out. If it's helping companies get better automated in this space or teaching people how to make content better. So it's like really those four stacks working together that the best businesses in the e-commerce world might have one, might have two, right? None of us actually have this 4-layer stack. And I think the biggest challenge with it is how do you stay focused enough to actually do those four things well, right? Because any one of those can make you $100 million a year in net income, right? Which one are you going to pick and which one are you going to crush, right? And maybe you can do two of them and just make sure you do those things in order. The content you have on lock. So it's like, what's the next thing you actually jump into? Mike or Matt, any thoughts on?
Yeah. I want to talk about the deflationary thing because I think it's super interesting. I mean, we're living in an inflationary world. Really, the last, I don't know, couple centuries have been an inflationary environment. This is the Bitcoin crowd. We'll show you the charts and say, that basically the amount of gold it takes to buy something hasn't changed that much over whatever 80 years, but the amount of dollars has, it takes way more dollars to buy something. And this goes back to monetary policy, debt. And this isn't just a US issue. This is a global issue. But the thing that could flip that is crazy productivity growths unlocked by AI. And it's a really interesting question. If we were to, if you guys have seen the graph, it shows several different products and how they've their prices have increased or decreased over time, and it's kind of like fans out. And so you've got things like televisions, which have actually decreased in cost by 90% over the last 10 years, and things like education that have increased by 90%. And so you have this huge range. I think it's a very interesting question. We're clearly going to get productivity unlocks from AI. Like you said, Ben, it's clearly going to come for a lot of jobs. Now, the optimistic view of that from the Andreessen crowd is, well, those jobs get eliminated, but new jobs get created. We'll see, maybe. But it clearly, if this productivity gains, if this comes to the market the way it looks like it's going to, then things are going to get a lot cheaper in some areas. And the question that I have in my mind is, what are the things that will not get disrupted and won't be deflationary, but will continue to be inflationary, if that makes sense? So if you believe that deflation is coming through AI, then where you really want to be is in the categories that don't get deflated, because that you're creating even more value. And I think that I was listening, the Acquired podcast is really good. They did a great episode on Mars recently. And one of the things they talk about is, I don't know if this is Buffett or who the quote was from, but basically that, it's a great business when you take in a commodity and you output a brand, because it's a margin creation machine. And so to me, that's one of the reasons why consumer might be a great place to be, even if AI comes and you get these huge productivity unlocks, is that people will pay a premium for brands. And we've seen this. We've seen this when it's like you have, one TV that has X brand and another TV that has Y brand, but it sells for twice the price. And you're like, what's the deal? And it's like, the answer is brand. So I think that doubling down on brand in an age of AI, and I think you could make an argument. I guess here's the argument I might make. It's going to be harder to disrupt brands in the future, is my guess, because the brands that exist and already have critical mass are going to have all these very, very effective technological tools to maintain their moat. And that margin creation opportunity is going to become even more valuable in a world where most things get commoditized, and that they're going to get better and better at defending it. So if that's the truth, then it's like, we've got the right point of view. Consumer is a really freaking hard place to be, But, like there have been days where I'm like, should I be in technology? Am I just like doing the stupid, like sometimes I'm like with Simple Modern, I'm doing like the hardest way you could possibly make money. But I think you can invert that thinking and say the very fact that it's so hard to create a consumer brand is exactly why you might want to be there as AI starts to unlock these productivity gains and commoditize so many things. Like I feel way better about owning a consumer brand than I do a SaaS company over the next 5
God,
years.
yes. Yeah,
Oh
Right?
yeah, I wouldn't touch a SaaS company with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys have even noticed, but you can use tools like Shout Out Lovable and V0, Replit, Cursor. I built a full automation tool for my treatment coordination. I have no coding experience at all,
Yeah.
and I built the full stack: database, back end, front end, authentication, payment, all by myself. I mean, it took me a couple of days to figure out how to do it and to start understanding SQL and theory, policies and all this type of stuff. But it's really not hard. If you can just talk to something and have if you're a tastemaker in the future, if you're a creative, if you're somebody who can, I think one of the most underrated things you can have in this future of AI is actually just the ability to break down something into steps. If you can explain something at a high level step version of anything, AI will be able to do it, whether that's a $1 billion business, a SaaS company, anything that you can think of. If you can list the steps out, it can be done.
And Ben, we're living in an age, I think right now, we're living in this moment in time where the tools are getting really good, but most people are not aware. And it still takes a certain level of kind of entrepreneurial spirit, kind of pioneering activity to go and do what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 years from now, it's going to be so easy and so effortless that 10-year-olds are going to be doing this, because it is going to be, like you said, it's going to be literally, I can just by voice say, I'd really love to automate this flow in my business. And I can just have a conversation with an agent or whatever, like an AI agent, and say, here's all the things I wish it could do. And, whatever, where I can just like, I'm talking with another human and it's just spinning things up instantly and we're iterating. We're not there yet, but that's coming. And when it gets here, it's just going to commoditize like massive parts of the stack. And so it's exciting because it's like, think about all the things that'll get built. Think about the way that that'll unlock. Like, I think you nailed it. Creatives are a great example where most creatives are not super technical. And so it's kind of it's a blocker, or if they are technical, they're technical in like Photoshop or, things like that. But like, this is going to unlock a tremendous amount of creative potential, and it's coming soon.
I think what we're going to see though in consumer, Mike, what you're hitting on is that consumer businesses are difficult to build because we lack operating leverage, like compared to a SaaS company, right? Like there's just not a lot of places that we have operating leverage in consumer goods. Our working capital needs are insane. We're moving physical things around the world, not bytes. Like there's so many things that are just harder. And Ben, you probably see this with what you've built with your product company, right? With something nice. It's just more difficult than creating content or creating SaaS. So I think what AI is likely to do in the short term is just allow consumer goods companies to create more and more operating leverage, which is just taking like G&A or SG&A and shrinking it. So it's going to be like deflationary in our cost structures. I think that's more likely to happen in the short term. I think the other trend, Ben, that I'm with Sean, I love your business. Anytime somebody talks about AI, my mind immediately goes to the flip side of this movement is going to be the human one, where it's like people buy from people, which is what my Mike is hitting on, this sort of like this notion of brand. But Ben, I think what you've got is like, it's you, right? Like your
it's
face,
the strongest
and people are
dentist
buying from
brand
you.
ever.
Yeah. Like it's an incredible value moat that you've created and can continue to build. And I actually think that like for all companies, they should be thinking of this, like in an AI world where it's so easy to make fake, right? The other side of that coin is going to be this like authentically human thing, and people are going to seek it out.
So let's talk about that, because I think two things are interesting here. One is I've been thinking about, Ben, you talked about like the AI generated content. I think it works because you've already built credibility with authentically generated content. And I think that's going to be a thing. I think the idea of starting a social media following where it's all AI driven, I'm actually pretty bearish on that. I think the more that like content creation costs go to zero and the AI gets better and better, the more people are actually going to crave authentic. They're going to be like, I want to see stuff from a real person. And then once they trust you, maybe you can roll out AI content. But I think the idea of in kind of a flawless world, imperfection is actually going to be sought. That it's going to be like, yeah, I want to see the video where a kid runs behind in the background or where it's not quite right. And so anyway, I think that's an interesting thing that I think you're going to see. I think similarly with brands, I think this idea of once you get to scale and you've established brand, then using these tools, like you're saying, Matt, whether it's shrinking SG&A and other things, I think that works. I think spinning up a brand out of the ether with the AI tools is going to be harder than ever. And I'll tell you one reason why I think this is probably true. Challenger brands typically are able to challenge through a couple of mechanisms. One is that they can be a lot more efficient than big bloated brands. So if you're right and SG&A gets shrunk by AI, then these established brands are going to be less vulnerable than they would have been in the past. But here's the other reason I think. Usually what happens is a challenger brand sees an opportunity in the market, oftentimes around marketing, that an old dinosaur brand doesn't see. So TikTok's a great example. An old dinosaur brand's like not even thinking about TikTok in the first 2 or 3 years, where somebody like Ben gets on there and has this kind of transformational piece of content that blows them up to 100,000 followers. I think the future we're looking at is that you've got AI agents that are, even if you're old and stodgy, the people running your company, your AI agents are not, and they're able to see tactics and see channels very quickly. And again, all these things are going to moat these businesses in a way that they haven't been moated in the past, because in the past they've been run by people, and those people get complacent. Those people get out of touch with trends, but the AI, I don't think, will be. And also another example here is, Twitter, people love to post tactics that are working, little arbitrages, little new things. The AI stuff's going to pick that up. Like you're not going to be able to build a challenger brand by having an insight on a new channel or a new tactic anymore, because it's going to be days or weeks until the incumbents see it and they come in. Whereas before it could have been years or decades.
I mean, Sean, we sort of saw this in the first generation of like D2C e-commerce. The theory was that these like new brands were going to take out the old incumbents, and all that happened was the old incumbents said, "That's a cool trick. I'll take my billions and just dump it into your cool new trick, and I'm still going to own all this shit." Like that's all that happened. So I think, Mike, you're probably bang on, because like we've seen this movie before.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the original thesis about it being deflationary, right? We've seen one industry be very deflationary in human history. Romans spent 40% of their coins on calories trying to get food, and Americans spend 4%, and you have unlimited options, and it's the tastiest thing that's ever been invented. So that's been a net positive for everybody. People do not starve to death anymore. Yes, there are occasional people who starve to death, but it's so fucking rare, and 100 times more people die of obesity than starving to death. And this is the digital revolution, the digital deflationary period. If it happens over the internet or on a screen, it'll be automated to the same degree food was automated. And so from 15% of the economy being digital in some way or the other, going to 1.5%. Right. And it's going to be awesome for everything else. What you're going to get is way more people learning to weld, way more people building houses, way more people coming up with ideas or whatever else. It is just the same level of deflationary, and it'll be quicker and easier to get done. And it'll be less painful, because 90% of people were farmers. Okay. Not 90% of people are email managers. Right. It is going to be less painful than the food thing was. But Ben,
that's a great stat, by the way, Sean. That's a great stat. That 40% to 4%. I've never heard that. Fantastic.
Yeah, I've never heard that either.
Well, I think I made it up, but that's like most stats.
Act as if. Just say it with confidence, and no one's going to call you on that.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah, I think two things. Yeah, go for it, Sean.
Oh, I was going to say thank you for being here, man. You've already given us an hour of your time, but if you want the final word, plug away and let us know what you're thinking.
Oh yeah. Real quick before we end, and I think like you were saying, just to kind of tie a bow in it, Mike, is for people coming up and current brands, I think the two things that are really important about these newer companies is, like you said, and I tell all these creators this, is you need to have that established brand before that AI takeover happens, because you're going to be able to leverage that in the future with an AI world without the downside. I do think there will be eventually some type of blue Twitter checkmark thing with human verification, KYC, all that, so that you can kind of tell this is an actual human creator versus an AI creator. I do think that's going to also happen as well. And then two is if you're a newer company taking on these companies like I am, and you even talked about Mars. We're coming from Mars too in the gum section. We're doing a Trident competitor, and there's a whole sugar-free candy competitor we can go do.
Oh, that's super interesting. I like it.
Love it.
Yeah, there's so many options. Yeah, just I don't have enough time.
Gum is a great business if you can make it work. Fantastic.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing is with these AI tools and smaller things, these corporate entities are very bloated. And you'll be able to pivot quicker, faster than lightning. Than these guys can even have their policy meeting for their policy meeting for their under meeting to have preparation for this meeting to have one little thing talked about done in 3 weeks time. And they're going to be in a weird situation where they're going to have public pressure to keep these hundreds of employees on that they don't need anymore, and you're not, because you're a smaller, leaner company. And so that's why I've already innovated on, pretty much every product we've done has never been done in dentistry. Like, we have patents on them, we've innovated on them, we've done things, because that just shows you that just these older companies are just ripe to be, kind of passed on to the new generation.
As a side note, that might be an arbitrage, is if you can develop AI that creates patents and takes a lot of the cost of filing it out of it, that's an arbitrage in a world where, it used to be prohibitively expensive to file too many patents. Now, and I'll tell you what, this is what the big corporations are going to do. It's going to be very difficult to patent anything new in the future, because there's going to be people just like the .com rush. You think about who are the people that bought up all the .coms, and it's like they just had an insight at a particular time and made generational wealth from it. I think it'll be the same thing with patents.
I think that's going to change, Mike. It's just like the self-driving cars is going to force a change in legislation and policy. I don't think any of us can actually see it, but like patent, all that stuff's going to have to be rebuilt in an AI first world. Right. So in the short term, there's so much opportunity. And in the long term, who the hell knows? Like, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Yeah, the bottleneck there is getting the patent officer to read the application.
Yeah.
So it's like, but Ben, if you need partners to launch the gum brand or the sugar-free candy brand, they'll let us know, dude. That sounds awesome. I really think you have a multi-billion-dollar empire to be built, as long as you can just focus on some of those product layers. Dude, appreciate the time. You're obviously a really cool dude. We'd love to have you on whenever. In the audience, you could just shoot him a DM on Twitter. The best place to reach him, the only place where he isn't massively fucking famous. So
that's true. Yeah, I keep it pretty low key. That was actually my gaming channel before I switched it over to now. I just talk about random AI and stuff, and everybody's like, "What are you talking about? You're crazy. You're supposed to be posting teeth videos on here." But I appreciate you guys so much, and actually, it's a blessing just to even have the ability to talk to people like you guys. It just so happens I knew Mike, from a previous life, but, to be able to even just ask questions your way and all these different things is amazing. And, it's about who you know, not what you know sometimes. And I just feel like if you just keep doing the right thing, eventually it works out. I've never been punished for doing the wrong thing, or never been punished for doing the right thing, so you can't really regret being a good person. If you guys want to find me, the Bentist overall social media, and then I believe on Twitter, it's _Bentist. If you want to go on my AI and e-com rants.
Dude,
and
shoot us a question whenever, dude. I want to help you succeed in this thing, because out of all the people we've talked to, clearest path to $1 billion outcome. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
man.
I really appreciate it. I've seen, from my companies, I felt the same way. And, I actually, changed my look on, things from being an orthodontist to doing all these things, because I was spending the same amount of time in a much bigger, ending pie that you can grab, and just finding those opportunities and taking it and creating your own luck, I think is really important for anybody in this space. But I don't want to keep you guys on for too long. I appreciate you guys so much. And like I said, I'm always open to talk deals. I know you guys are masters in your space and have done this way more than I have. And so, pretty much own all of Something Nice, currently own all of Windcrest, but we're probably going to be putting a lot of that off in June with this operations company that's kind of built out thousands of offices before. But hey, I'm a free agent.
Love it. You've got
So,
3 new fans, man.
yeah.
This is super cool. Thanks,
Yeah.
Ben.
Hell yeah,
appreciate
brother.
it
Talk
so
to
much,
you later.
guys. Yeah. See you guys.
You made it. An amazing episode of the Operators Podcast. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing to the newsletter. Thank you to fulfill the best sponsor on earth, Northbeam, Postscript. They're tied for 2 of the best sponsors on earth. Love them. Love what they do for us. Thank you for being here. Subscribe, like, share. Follow me on Twitter. Follow the other guys on Twitter. Talk to you later. Goodbye.